3, 2, 1. I can't do that with my left hand apparently. 3, 2, 1. Holy crap. You know, there's something about fall that invites a feeling of warmth and desire for comfort, and I can't think of anything better to do that than some good food. And I've got a very special recipe for you today from my childhood that invites those very same feelings of warmth and comfort. So with that, welcome to the kitchen. Grilled cheese and tomato soup is one of the staples for comfort food in our history, but I'd like to introduce you to another one as well, the classic tuna fish sandwich. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of you don't like tuna fish sandwich, and I'll level with you, for good reason. Tuna fish is classically done wrong by takeout places, and that's a travesty because if you're going to serve a sandwich, you expect it to have a certain level of quality. But oftentimes we end up with a tuna fish sandwich that's watered down and pretty tasteless. We're not going to have that today. And we're also going to introduce this in combination with our grilled cheese and tomato soup. So stick around with me through this episode. I've got our tuna fish to start out with. Now I'm using a solid white albacore. This is one of my favorites, but you can really use any kind, but I do recommend that you use tuna in water. Avoid the label that says tuna in oil. It's just going to be a mess. Now you want this to be quite dry. There's a few different ways you could do that. You could wrap it up in a paper towel or a rag, and clean rag preferably, and you're going to wring it out, or you just use the can lid and squeeze out as much water as you can. Now that this is nice and dry, I'll use a fork here to mix our ingredients in. The essential ingredients to a good tuna fish sandwich is going to start off with some mayonnaise. Now I've got about a dollop of mayonnaise here. That's just about a spoonful or so. And the idea is I don't want so much on here that I'm drowning it. Okay. What we're doing is just coating the tuna. So you just need enough to do that. Finally, some good brown mustard. You can use any kind of mustard you like. Really, any kind will do. This is about a tablespoon of mustard. We're going to throw that in there. And you might need to add some more. And finally, some sweet relish. This is a very important ingredient here, and you can use any kind of brand that you like. So we'll throw that in here as well. Now, when in doubt on your mixtures, go less and add more as needed. But this should be a good start for us right now, and I'm just going to mix this in a little bit and to get an idea on if we need to add any more. Now again, this is a pretty standard tuna fish mix. Nothing very exciting about this at all. In fact, it's pretty plain and boring. We're going to talk about our ingredients now once you're satisfied that you've got a good mixture and a good coating. Not too moist and also not too dry. And you've got a good sweet flavor combined with that mustard. So let's talk about our spices. This is where it starts to get interesting. Now, we're going to add some pink Himalayan sea salts to this. Just enough to add some salty flavor to that. Careful with how much you put on. Also, your standard table salt or iodized salt does just fine. Pepper is also an essential ingredient in this, and I'm just going to put some on there. Just enough to coat the top is a good way to work out the balance for your ingredients. If you're not sure how much to put on, start off with just covering the top a little bit, mix it in, taste it, see if it's okay with you. But that should be plenty for pepper. Now, the secret ingredients to make your tuna extra special is a little bit of onion powder. And again, I'm going to use the same method, so I don't want to give you an exact measurement. What we're just going to do is coat the top of that just a bit. And that's really all it needs. And that little hint of onion in there really enhances the flavor. I also, and this is optional, like to add a little bit of basil to it. And we'll just put a couple of dashes on there. That's really all it needs. We're just adding a little bit more dimension to this. Now, one other thing that's commonly found in tuna sandwiches is some sort of hot pepper, like a red pepper. Now, I have some red pepper here, and I also have some cayenne pepper, which I'm going to try out today. And we're not trying to make this spicy. That's not the point. All we're doing is trying to give it some dimension. So watch carefully. This is all you need. That's it. Couple little dashes, and when you're eating this, you're going to experience just a little bit of that spice, that heat behind it, but it's not spicy at all. It's going to be delicious. Now, one other thing, when you're working with your tuna, you're getting your tuna ready, unless you're doing store-bought tuna and you're using tuna from a can, just make sure you rinse it out thoroughly before you throw it away. Good life lesson for you. Now we'll mix all this in. And this is one of the reasons I like using a fork. It allows me to not only fold it in, but break down the tuna a little more into smaller chunks. Now we've got some nice color to that, and it's well mixed in. Give it a little taste. Excellent. That's very good. Now again, add additional ingredients as needed to get the flavor that you're going for. If you need a little more sweet relish, add that, or a little bit more mustard, add that. And start with less ingredients and work your way up. Remember that can sizes differ between brands, so you want to make sure that you're compensating for that enough with your ingredients. We'll set that aside for now, and let's take a minute to talk about our grilled cheese. Now, I've got a couple different options for us today, but I wanted to talk about bread for starters. Since this is an athletic channel and nutrition's important, we should talk about some of that as well. Now, I am a big proponent of reading labels, and you should be too. The food industry is not your friend. It's important when you're choosing a bread that you look at the first few ingredients. In this case, this one says whole wheat flour, water, sugar, soybean oil, wheat gluten, honey, yeast, and it goes on like so. There's nothing bad about this bread at all. This is a pretty good quality bread for not very much either. It is not an expensive brand, but it has good ingredients in it, and that's the kind of things that you want to look for. So making this a little extra special, I have some sourdough bread for us today, and this is again quality ingredients. It starts with whole wheat flour, and this happens to be organic. So also a really good brand, and it was only $2, so not a bad deal either. Moral of that story is choose your breads wisely. Now, moving on, let's go ahead and take care of our tomato soup. Now, I'm using a standard Campbell's tomato soup. Been around for a long time. It's a very good brand. Not fancy, but who says we have to be all that fancy? In fact, I would say a lot of the more expensive brands of tomato soup out there are quite overrated and really don't taste that well. In fact, I could make a better tasting tomato soup with this right here than I can out of some of those high-end fancy ones in the cartons. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to make this into something exceptional. So we're going to start off by opening this up and talking about what kind of base we have for it. A lot of people will take a simple tomato soup can and they will destroy the flavor opportunity by adding water into it. We're not going to do that. We're going to use whole milk. Now you could substitute with other things. I've done this with almond milk, but you're still not going to get a good flavor with that. It's going to taste sort of metallic-y. It's just not good. You want something that has some fats in it, and that's why we're using whole milk. I do recommend using whole milk. Not only is the flavor going to be better, fat is actually an essential part of your diet. You do need some of it in your diet, and most products that have fats that have been taken out tend to add more sugar. And of course, that's the opposite of what you need. What this is going to do is make you feel more full because of the fat content in it, and therefore it will be more satisfying. So we're going to add 1 full can of whole milk to this mix, but not all at once. Here's the secret to making this work. First off, our temperature is going to be set at medium-low, and we're going to add just a little bit at a time, stirring regularly. I want that all nice and mixed in, and I will let this heat up slowly as we go. Tomato soup is very delicate. It will burn very easy, so we're going to avoid that by keeping on a low temperature and stirring regularly. If at some point you start noticing darker blotches rising up in your soup, that means you've overcooked the bottom and it's starting to burn already. You've already lost that battle. It's not to say that you can't salvage it, but if it goes too far or too much, it will affect the flavor and it won't be very tasty at all. So try to avoid that. We're going to set that can to the side now while that slowly heats up, and I'll continue to add that cold milk to balance out that temperature as it rises as we go. Now, let's look at our sandwiches. Generally with a grilled cheese, you take whatever bread you're going to end up using and you're going to pair it with something like a cheddar. I would recommend staying far away as you can from American cheese because first off, that's not cheese, that's garbage. It's vegetable oil that's been hydrogenized, and that's no need to put that into your body. We're going to use real cheese, and a nice medium cheddar or sharp cheddar is a really good way to go. Now this is freshly cut cheddar cheese I'll be using for this, but I wanted to give you some more varieties of things you can do with this. Not just using a standard cheddar, but we're going to make a multi-cheese sandwich for you. And I hope that you take an opportunity to try this out as well with the sourdough. We're going to use some butter onto our pan. And again, we're going to heat this up to about a medium-low to medium-high temperature. Be careful it's not too high. Probably medium is going to be too much for most cases. So about medium-low. Now, if you do just want to standard grilled cheese, cheddar's a perfect cheese to use. But let's experiment a little today, and I'm going to use some Swiss and some freshly grated Parmesan as well. Now, there are recipes out there for 5 grilled cheese blends. We won't quite go that far today, but let's give this a try anyway. While that's heating up, I'm going to get the butter all ready to go. And I'm going to give our soup a stir. Nice and evenly coated. And we can set that aside. Another stir for our soup. And we'll place the bread down in our pan. Add some cheese to this, and I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty of cutting this cheese up a little bit with my hands just to get it all centered on there nicely and not falling off the sides. And a sprinkle of Parmesan. Just get that nice and evenly distributed. Don't have to worry about those other parts too much. Okay. Go ahead and cover it up. And there we go. Now let's talk about some other things we can do with our soup. I mentioned how we can make this taste better than even some of that high-end shelf expensive stuff you get from the cartons at the store. Make sure that's nice and cooked in there. I'm going to drop the temperature a little bit more. So I don't want that cooking too fast. Now, easy things to make tomato soup more worth your while. First off, we're going to add a little bit of pepper to it. We're also going to add some onion powder. Again, special ingredient onion powder can be used for so many different things and it enhances the flavor. So we're going to measure this in, but again, I don't want to give you an exact measurement. Start low, add in as needed. Just don't add too much because it will ruin the flavor. All I'm going to do is kind of dash the top of this. There it is. And that's really all you need. That should be just about it, just a dash. Some people would suggest that you might need something like garlic powder added to it, but no, absolutely not. Do not add garlic powder to your tomato soup. It will taste awful. One other thing for my secret ingredient to making tomato soup so great, and that is rubbed sage. Now I've got about, let's say maybe a teaspoon here. And that's again about a dashing for the top of it. That's all you need. And we're just going to throw that in. Let's see how that works out. Actually, that's probably a little bit too much. I didn't even need all of that. Just a bit. We'll mix that in. And that is going to make this taste very savory. Which again is about the theme for fall, isn't it? It's about that warmth, that comfort that you get from really good food. This is going to feel really nice. Add a little more cooling milk to that. Now back to our tuna fish. How does this fit into the mix? Well, a grilled cheese and tomato soup alone aren't necessarily going to be a great meal in and of themselves. You need something more to it, and fish is a great way to get some omega-3s in you and other essential proteins and vitamins. So I've got this nice mix we've already prepared. And there's a couple of different ways you could use this. One is simply just serving it like this in a bowl. And I'm a sucker for Ritz crackers. So you could plate these together. We'll start off with a side of crackers. Just like so. And if you're serving multiple guests, or even just yourself, get a nice little bowl. And we'll stick some of that there. Serve it like so. And you've got yourself a nice plated meal. These go excellent with each other. That's just about perfect. However, there's one other option that you might find interesting, and that is going back to our sandwich. Little puppies, do I keep tripping on you? I'm so sorry, girls. My girls, huh? Well, thank you, thank you. I'm not going to touch you because I'm going to keep my hands clean. Okay. Sandwich. Now, this is already pretty well melted. Let's check the underneath. It's getting there. It's very, very good looking, nice and golden brown, but could use a little bit more time. I'd like to suggest for you one other way of preparing your sandwich, and that is a tuna melt. And that is simply tuna with cheese made like a grilled cheese. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of this on here, just like so. Now, these are all options. I hope that you're taking some notes here, that these are all different ways you could prepare these ingredients. You could do a standard grilled cheese with just the cheddar. You could do a standard tuna melt with cheddar and tuna, or you could try this extra fancy combination with several different kinds of cheese and a well-prepared tuna mix. I'm going to put a little bit more in here. There it is. And this is such a simple snack to prepare. You could do this just about any time, and this is ready to flip. Don't forget about your soup. Pour the rest of that milk in there. Should be good to go. Again, we'll turn that temperature down because it's already pretty hot, and I don't need it to cook too fast on the bottom. Now it's time to flip our sandwich, but let me show you a little trick here. If you don't want to get your hands dirty and it's a little hard to flip, easy way to do that is to simply put this over on the pan, and there we are. And now we can move that a little more easily onto the pan without making too much of a mess. Keep stirring your tomato soup. Now it should look like this. That's a nice texture. Excellent flavor, but I don't want it to get any hotter, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that burner off and move it off of the burner so that it's not cooking any further. You don't want to get that bottom part of it overcooked. Now, isn't that looking fine? This is an excellent sandwich. Now, another thing you could try is not keeping it on the burner too much. There's really no reason to keep it constantly on the heat. You could remove it from time to time, especially if you're using a thick piece of bread and you need the center cheeses to cook more evenly, or rather to melt more evenly. So if you're not getting the kind of meltage you want to see inside your sandwich, go ahead and remove it from the heat, maybe put a lid on top and let it that heat just permeate throughout the sandwich until it's a nice gooey texture that you're looking for. And you can always test a little bit, and that's holding together pretty well, meaning the cheeses are well melted together. As needed, you can return it to the heat to finish the browning process. Now, something you might consider as far as the plating goes is cutting this up, and we're just going to use our spatula here and chop that up nicely. So you want this into nice edible squares, at least small enough for finger food is a good way to go. Go ahead and turn our burner off, and notice that nicely melted cheese in there. Very nice. So I want to do something a little bit special with this. And so we've cut these into bite-sized squares. If you're using a standard size bread, you might cut it into 4s so that you've got some nice finger food to work with. And what I'm going to do now is add a little bowl for our soup. All right, one more nice stir. Excellent. I'm going to plate this on the center, making a nice display. And we're going to finish this off with a little bit of parsley just for color. That should do. Now, part of the experience of good food is presentation, and you're worth it. Treat yourself right. Make something that looks nice, and then you'll be able to enjoy it even more. A good meal is a combination of quality ingredients that are prepared just right, and right combinations for a good flavor palette, but also that presentation that makes it look rich. Often it is that richness that adds more value than the price. Yep. Okay. And there we have it. Beautiful meal, ready to eat. Well, let's give it a try here. Oh yeah. Now this is also an option, of course. This is one of my favorite things to do, is dipping your tuna sandwich in tomato soup. Oh, it is ambrosia. You gotta trust me on that. Topped myself with this one. That's excellent. Definitely recommended. Definitely give this a try. I love the sourdough combination and that nice caramelization on the outside of the bread, combined with the gooiness of the cheeses, the different flavors of the cheeses, and of course a well-prepared tuna is really making all this come together. Tomato soup, it's just something I find that really enhances it all and brings it all together. But you don't have to do that. You can always eat it separately, and of course you got the crackers to crumble into your soup as well. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Export Education and our new cooking segment. I've been Ryan Shanahan, and here's to good eating.